Ansa works at the supermarket as a sales representative. Her job mainly involves restocking products, placing price tags, and handling other typical sales rep duties. While going about her work, a burly security guard often looks at her with a stoic expression, like she is the cause of his problems. She doesn't pay attention to this, though. After a long day at work, she changes out of her uniform and takes the bus home. Dinner is microwaved, and the radio news reveals she should be grateful she lives in Helsinki, Finland, not Ukraine, with the ongoing war. The microwave pings just then, but she realizes that her dinner is a mess, so that goes in the trash. She switches the radio station so at least there's something less depressing about her night. The news station places a song that's just as awful as the news, but it will have to do. Jalapa works as a sandblaster who has no regard for no smoking signs, or the liquid gas cylinders inches from him. He confidently sits by the sign and lights up a cigarette. His friend, Huotari, points out the obvious. Smoking close to explosives will send him to his early grave, but Jalapa believes charred lungs from the cigarettes will take him out first. Jalapa shares a small room with a roommate. The radio goes on with news about the war in Ukraine. It's a Friday night, and the roommate is going out somewhere like most people do on Fridays. Jalapa, on the other hand, is stretched out in bed with a magazine in hand. Huotari comes in to persuade him to go to karaoke since it's a Friday night. Jalapa isn't interested in singing and prefers solitude because he feels tough guys don't sing, which makes Huotari quickly interject that there's nothing tough about him. Huotari opines that the loneliness and regrets will get to him when he's older, but Jalapa has said it before and will say it again. He has no plans of getting older. Huotari still insists they head out, refusing to take no for an answer, which makes Jalapa finally give in and get dressed. He keeps a stash of liquor and takes a swing from the bottle as if needing resilience to cope with the night. They arrive at the karaoke bar, and Huotari plans to sing, claiming he has a good baritone note. He checks the catalog for a song, but Jalapa tries to dissuade him from singing. Nevertheless, he strides to the stage with confidence, prepared to prove his point. Jalapa can only drink as he watches his friend leave. Huotari goes with the song, Autumn Under the Rowan Tree. He confidently sings in his baritone voice and gets a round of applause from the crowd after his performance. He returns to his seat, and Jalapa remarks that he sounded more like a soprano. He's either tone-deaf or joking because Huotari can boast of at least a tenor. A woman next to him compliments his singing, and Huotari is swift to flirt. She indirectly conveys that he's old, but Huotari promises that he's not even up to 50. The woman is in the company of Ansa, who's looking just as dejected as Jalapa. Another gentleman takes the stage and begins a depression song. Quite fed up, Jalapa steps aside for a smoke. Ansa and Jalapa both steal glances at each other, although they don't approach each other. What should have ended as another mundane day at work takes a drastic turn when Ansa gets fired because she planned to take an expired product from the supermarket home. Of course, it was no other than the burly security guard who snitched on her. Her co-worker, Lisa, catches up on what's happening and also brings out a product she took that was expired. Due to her support for her friend, she ends up getting fired as well. They don't seem the least bit concerned about this as they happily stroll out of the supermarket and go on their separate ways home. Jalapa shows up for work 4 minutes late. His supervisor queries that it's the third time that week, but Jalapa states they're currently on Monday of a new week. Regardless, the supervisor wants him to put in more effort because the client has them on thin ice. Jalapa complains that the compressor keeps breaking down. The supervisor asks if he should add a company car also to the list of things they'll need. Jalapa replies he doesn't have a license, so the car will have to wait. He heads out to start his duties for the day, but not without taking a swing from a liquor bottle he keeps hidden in one of the control boxes. Ansa is freshly unemployed and listening to the morning news when she gets an epiphany to unplug all the electric appliances and turn off the lights too because the electric bill isn't going to pay itself. She finds the nearest cafe and pays to use a computer with the last money in her purse, even though it's rather expensive. She surfs a job vacancy forum for possible jobs and finds a job posting for a kitchen assistant at a place called California Pub. She immediately goes over to the place and the man comments on how weak she looks. To this, she hastily brings out her hygiene card. Fortunately for her, he hires her on the spot because he urgently needs a replacement. The previous assistant passed away and the dirty glasses are already starting to pile up. He mentions that her pay will come in every Monday, and he'd appreciate it if she got to work right away. She asks where she can change, and he tells her there's a shared toilet just down the way. She doesn't need to be told twice as she swiftly dons an apron while in front of him and starts washing. The bar has a number of customers with generous drinking habits, meaning that Ansa has a long night ahead of her. Jalapa and Huotari are also at the California Hub. Huatari complains that Jalapa is a boring companion. Jalapa is depressed and he's depressed because he drinks a lot. Huatari advises him to stop drinking if he doesn't like it, but Jalapa assures him he loves drinking. Huatari decides they can talk about football instead. On Ansa's way home, she finds Jalapa passed out by the bus stop. Some guys ransack him, but find absolutely nothing of value to steal. They walk away as Ansa approaches. She checks on the drunk, but he doesn't even stir at her touch. She's caring enough to keep his head from slouching so much before she needs to board the bus. She keeps watching him, even as the bus pulls away. Ansa turns up for work the next day and finds her boss being apprehended by the police. He calls out to her to take some time off work, like she has a choice. He's been busted for dealing, and the bar will be closed indefinitely. Jalapa shows up. He'd wanted any early morning beer, but sees that won't be possible. He asks Ansa if she'd like to get coffee with him instead, and she'd like to, but she doesn't have the money. Jalapa offers to pay. At the coffee shop, Jalapa reveals his gentlemanly nature. Earlier that day, Ansa had mentioned it was her payday, but now that her boss has just been arrested and she's got no money on her, he infers she must be hungry. He offers that she can go order some pastries he'll pay for. While she's at the counter ordering a cinnamon roll, he adds a dash of liquor to his coffee. She returns wanting to know what's next on their agenda, so he suggests they could go see a movie. Ansa wants him to choose what they get to see. They see a zombie movie and Ansa relays her review afterwards. She enjoyed the film and wouldn't mind hanging out with Jalapa again. She writes down her phone number and hands it to him. He wants to know her name and walk her home, but she claims she lives nearby and will reveal her name on the next date. She bids him goodnight with a kiss on the cheek, and Jalapa can still feel the sensation of her lips even when she's walked away. Sadly, when he dips into his pocket to get a cigarette, the paper with her number falls out and drifts away without his notice. As the depressing news about the war goes on the next day, Jalapa realizes the paper is missing. Ansa is at her own end, feeling down and disappointed, expecting a call that's not going to come. She quietly turns down the radio and mopes by the window. Later that night, Jalapa opts to wait by the cinema entrance in hopes of running into Ansa. She'd told him she lived nearby, so he waited till the cinema closed, but she didn't show up. Just when he walks away, she comes from behind and sees the pile of cigarettes on the ground he's left behind. Jalapa has an accident at work with a pipe he's been repeatedly complaining about. The supervisor argues the pipes are changed every 4 years according to the standard, but Huatari knows better. The supervisor hasn't changed any pipes according to standards. Jalapa takes a breathalyzer test in compliance with workplace regulations. They further run a blood test, and he's sent packing because, well, he's a drunk and a walking hazard in the construction site. Jalapa clears his locker. Huatari wonders what he plans to do next, and Jalapa voices he can find work at a building site with no education as a handyman if he accepts a pay cut. It's against the union regulations, but Jalapa states it's not an issue because he's a member of the metalworkers union. While taking a swing from the bottle of alcohol he discovered in his locker, he invites Huatari to keep him company in the bar, as he needs someone to keep him in check so he doesn't cause a scene. He also doesn't have a place to stay and isn't ready to give up drinking yet. While they're at the bar, Jalapa brings up the previous karaoke night. Huatari remembers the night quite well. He sang beautifully and is appalled that a record label hasn't reached out to him yet. They didn't have to be present at the bar. Word about his good singing must have spread around, and they should legit be looking for him. Jalapa points out Huatari had flirted with a woman that night, and she'd had a friend with her. Huatari laments that he always gets rejected by women because they say he's too old. Jalapa relays he met the friend the other day, and it was a match made in heaven. Huatari recalls she was pretty but quiet, and seemed like a suitable wife. Jalapa tells him he actually lost her number. Huatari gets the idea to ask the directory, but Jalapa doesn't even know her name. Still adamant, he's hoping he can trace her through the supermarket she used to work for, but Huatari wasn't listening much to the second blonde after she called him old, so he didn't pick up the name of the supermarket. Seeing there's no other possible option, Jalapa decides to settle for another glass of beer. It's their 6th glass, but 2 more won't hurt. Meanwhile, Ansa has gotten another job at a factory, while Jalapa works on a building site. 2 habits are yet to end. He still drinks on the job because he hasn't learned his lesson from his previous job. He also still stands outside the cinema entrance in hopes of seeing Ansa. His perseverance pays off and she walks by one evening. She states he never called, so he explains he lost her number and has been looking for her since then. She'd thought he'd found someone else, but he assures that was never the case. Ansa invites him to her place for dinner. He agrees, and they arrange for the next day by 8. He asks for her address and informs he'll be 5 minutes early. She nags he's just gonna lose it again, but gives him anyway. Determined, he makes an effort to tuck it in his wallet for safekeeping. She quips he shouldn't get robbed though and lose the wallet. If he does get robbed, it's probably the universe's way of saying, let it go. Ansa goes to the supermarket to get some stuff. She'll need an extra plate and a set of cutlery. Jalapa does some shopping of his own. He gets her flowers. Ansa also got a mini bottle of sparkling wine and made salad. Jalapa gulps his wine in one swing. It's the first time he's having sparkling wine, and in an aperitif too. After dinner, they sit like 5 feet apart on the sofa, awkward as ever. Jalapa comments that she has a nice apartment with a narrow bed. The bed is big enough for her, and that's all that matters to her. She inherited the house from her godmother, and Jalapa teases she's an heiress then. He thanks her for the food and the aperitif. He's taken a particular liking to it, and she states it's all gone. It's quite confusing though if he's referring to the aperitif or the sparkling wine. She also has no biscuits to offer him as dessert, but she can put on some music while he smokes. The radio must have a default setting to the news channel because it's always the first thing on. It's more terrible news on the devastating effect the war has on Ukraine. Ansa lets the reporter speak for a moment before she turns it off in irritation. Jalapa goes to retrieve the liquor stashed in his coat and he takes a swing. Ansa watches him with her stern face. She reveals she lost both her brother and father to alcohol, and then she lost her mother to grief. She likes him, but he has to quit the alcohol, cause she won't accept a drunk man. Jalapa packs his coat to leave because he won't take orders from her. Ansa doesn't stop him. Instead, she channels her frustration into trashing his dirty dishes instead of washing them. He must have been her last hope of a life outside solitude. Jalapa goes to the bar to drink, having several shots at an alarming speed. Ansa's life resumes as normal: work, bus ride, solitude. Jalapa turns in for work, but his supervisor queries him for drinking on the job and fires him. Jalapa angrily takes off his helmet and gloves and proceeds to leave the site. Ansa and Lisa catch up at a cafe. Lisa doesn't get why Ansa is moping over Jalapa, calling him a loser. Ansa is upset he'd shamelessly drink like that in her place, and hasn't even called to apologize. She'd thought he'd be different in some way at least. Lisa opines they can never be different. They're all the same, and they should drink to that. Jalapa and the bar attendant are the only ones left in the bar. He's fallen asleep, so the bar attendant stirs him so he can head home and return the following morning. He's homeless, so he spends the night at the bus stop. Ansa, on her end, lays on her narrow bed, very well awake, thinking into the night. Ansa is on her way out when she comes across 2 guys with a stray dog. She takes a liking to it and is willing to adopt it. They happily hand it over to her because they had planned to take it down from the onset, knowing the site is not safe for animals and the dog might be run over by a machine. When she gets home, she baths her new pet and lets it sleep in her bed during nighttime. Jalapa and Huatari attend another karaoke night and listen to the weird lyrics of the song being performed. Huatari is the only one drinking that night because Jalapa has quit. Jalapa is now staying at a guest house. He struggles with staying clean, reaching out for a bottle to keep his company. He decides to take out all his liquor stash and throws their content down the sink. With the bottles gone, the next thing he needs to struggle with is sleep. Jalapa didn't quit cigarettes. He takes a drag from one after a shower. After a quick dilemma, he picks up his phone and calls Ansa. She's at home reading a book when she gets the call. He describes himself as the drunk she left on the street, referencing the night he was ransacked, and she checked up on him. He's sober now and asks if he can come over. She agrees he can. Jalapa wants to borrow a coat from the manager of the guest house and lies about needing it for a meeting. The manager knows he's lying, asking him if he's actually going to see a woman. He concedes, and the manager believes such a woman must be desperate. He decides Jalapa can have the coat as he has no use for it anymore. Ansa cleans the house and gets dressed to receive him. The way she is anxiously staring out of the window, it's obvious she's been waiting for a while. Outside, it's raining, and that could be the cause of his delay. The night ends with Jalapa failing to show up. Ansa runs into Huatari, who informs her that Jalapa got hit by a train and is in bad shape. It explains why she's not heard from him in a while. She asks for the address and Huatari gives it to her. She learns from Huatari that his name is Jalapa, although Huatari doesn't know his first name. Jalapa is a coma patient, and Huatari advises Ansa to wait some minutes before going to see him. He's also restless about how he left things off with Lisa. He insists that he's not that old, and Lisa shouldn't have shut him down. Ansa gives Lisa's number to him. Ansa arrives at the hospital and asks the receptionist about having Jalapa as a patient. The receptionist needs his first name, but Ansa doesn't know that. They need to know if she's a relative, and she replies she's his sister, adding she's a sister in faith, when the receptionist gives her an odd stare. The receptionist directs another nurse to take Ansa to Jalapa's room. Jalapa is still in a coma and Ansa is advised to talk or read to him as it usually helps. Ansa goes in with a news magazine and sees Jalapa has been hooked up to life support and wrapped up in bandages. The magazine she'd been planning to read to him is rather grotesque, so she has to put it away. She decides to tell him instead about the World Cup finals. Finland made it and will go against Brazil. The odds are against Brazil. She continues to pay him a visit, communicating as best as she can to him. On one of her visits, the oxygen pipe has been removed, meaning he must be getting better, right? Ansa gets news that Jalapa woke up and she tells the nurse, Tonya, that she'll come over to see him. She goes to visit with the dog and plants a kiss on his forehead upon seeing him. His eyes flutter and he asks if he's passed on. He tells her he's been meaning to see her and dreamt they got married. Ansa thinks he must have taken a hard blow to the head. Lisa waits with Ansa while Jalapa is getting discharged. Ansa asks about the karaoke king, Huatari. Lisa tells her that they have a date for the next day. She further talks about the fact that he's had rejuvenation surgery and eats ginseng roots. It's time for Ansa to leave, and she bids Lisa farewell and walks out with her dog. Back inside the hospital, Jalapa is well enough to walk on his own. Tonya hands Jalapa some of her ex-husband's clothes. He thanks her and hopes to return them soon, but she won't be needing them because her ex-husband won't come back. She hopes he doesn't also because she's changed the locks. She tells him he is welcome to keep them. Jalapa leaves the hospital on crutches and finds Ansa with the dog waiting for him, a small smile on her face. And in case you're wondering, the dog's name is Chaplin.